I'm 31 years old now, and I've spent most of my adult life chasing silence. Not the peaceful kind you get in your bedroom at night. I mean the kind of silence that only exists miles away from highways, streetlights, and other people. 3 months ago, right after my engagement fell apart, I packed up my truck without telling anyone where I was going. I didn't want comfort. I didn't want advice. I just wanted distance. There's a stretch of forest about 2 hours north of Redding, California. No marked campsites, no signal. Just an old logging road that disappears into pine trees thick enough to block out the sky. I'd camped there once before, years ago. I remembered a narrow river bend where the water slowed down and the trees formed a kind of natural wall around it. That's where I was headed. It had already started drizzling by the time I turned off the highway. The deeper I drove, the worse the rain became. Not thunderstorm level, just steady, cold rain that soaked into everything. When I reached the end of the dirt road, I noticed something I didn't expect. A single dark SUV was parked crooked near the tree line. Engine cold. No lights on. No one inside. That bothered me more than if someone had been sitting there. I told myself it didn't matter. Public land. People wander. Still, I took a picture of the license plate before hiking in. Just in case. The hike to the river took about 20 minutes. The rain made everything smell sharp and earthy. Pine needles. Wet soil. Moss. I found the same bend in the river and set up camp under a cluster of thick trees. The rain softened into a mist, barely audible against the current of the water. For a few hours it was exactly what I needed. No voices. No notifications. No memories creeping in. Just rain. It was close to sunset when I noticed something across the river. At first I thought it was a tree stump. Then it moved. A man stood on the opposite bank, partially shielded by brush. He wasn't fishing. He wasn't hiking. He was just standing there, watching. I gave a small wave, the polite kind you give strangers in the woods. He didn't wave back. He just tilted his head slightly, like he was studying me. Then he disappeared into the trees without a sound. That's when the peaceful feeling left. I told myself he probably owned the SUV. Probably just checking who else was out here. Still, I made sure my handgun was within reach when I crawled into my tent that night. I always carry when I camp alone. Especially after dark. The rain returned around midnight, heavier this time. It drummed against the tent fabric in uneven bursts. That's when I heard it. Not rain, not wind. Footsteps. Slow. Measured. Circling. At first, I tried to convince myself it was runoff dripping from branches, but runoff doesn't stop. Runoff doesn't change direction. These steps did. They moved from one side of my tent to the other. Then behind me. My breathing got shallow. I reached for my flashlight with one hand and my handgun with the other. The footsteps stopped. Complete silence. Even the rain felt quieter. And then, a shadow passed across the thin wall of my tent, close enough that I could see the outline of a shoulder. I didn't think. I unzipped the tent fast and stepped out into the rain, gun raised. Don't move. My voice sounded steadier than I felt. About 15 feet away, near a tree, stood the same man from across the river. Rain soaked through his clothes. His hair hung over his face, and in his right hand was a hatchet. Not raised, just hanging loosely at his side. Like he hadn't decided what to do with it yet. For a few seconds, neither of us moved. The rain ran down the barrel of my gun. He didn't look angry. He didn't look drunk. He looked empty. I told him to drop it. He didn't. Instead, he said something that still wakes me up at night. He said, "You weren't supposed to see me earlier." My stomach dropped. I repeated myself louder. Drop it. Now. He finally let the hatchet fall into the mud, but he didn't step back. He just stared at me. Then he said quietly, "My friend didn't listen either." I didn't ask what that meant. I didn't want to know. I fired one shot into the ground near his feet. Mud exploded upward. That finally broke whatever trance he was in. He stumbled backward. I ordered him to turn around and walk toward the trees. Slowly. He hesitated, then obeyed. I kept the gun trained on him until the darkness swallowed his shape completely. But I didn't wait. I packed what I could in under 3 minutes. Left the tent. Left the food. Left everything else. I moved fast through the woods, barely using the flashlight. Every snapping twig behind me made my heart slam against my ribs. I was convinced he was following. When I reached the dirt road, the SUV was gone. Just empty space where it had been. The rain washed away most of the tire tracks. I drove until I found signal and called the sheriff's department. They said they'd check the area. I never heard back. 2 weeks later, I searched local news out of curiosity. There had been a missing persons report filed 3 counties over. A man in his early 30s, last seen camping with a friend. Only one of them returned home. The friend claimed they'd gotten separated during a storm. No charges were filed. Insufficient evidence. I never found out if it was the same man. But I stopped camping alone after that. Because the scariest part wasn't the hatchet. It wasn't the footsteps. It was the way he said it. My friend didn't listen either. Like it wasn't a warning, like it was a memory. And sometimes, when it rains hard at night, I still hear those slow, circling footsteps. Just outside the walls. Waiting. I told myself it was a coincidence. It had to be. Northern California is full of forests, full of campers, full of storms. But the dates matched. The location was only about 40 miles from where I had been. And the report mentioned something else. The missing man's friend had returned home alone, without their camping gear. He told police they got separated during heavy rain. Said his friend must have wandered off in the dark. They searched for 3 days. Dogs picked up a scent near a river bend. Then it just stopped. No body. No blood. Nothing. Just gone. I tried to forget about it. I really did. But about a month later, something happened that made it impossible. I was cleaning out my truck when I found something wedged under the passenger seat. It wasn't mine. It was a photograph. The edges were slightly bent, like it had been shoved somewhere in a hurry. My hands went cold before I even flipped it over. It was me. Standing by the river. Rain falling. Back turned to the camera. Taken from across the water. The exact moment I'd waved at him. I don't remember him holding a camera. I don't remember hearing a shutter. But there I was. Centered. Framed. Studied. On the back of the photo, written in shaky pen, were 3 words. Should have listened. I don't scare easily. But that night, I slept with every light in my house on. And here's the part that still keeps me awake. When I found that picture, the SUV had already been gone, meaning at some point, before I sped off that night, he was close enough to my truck to slip something inside it, while I was still in the forest, which means one of 2 things. Either he doubled back after disappearing into the trees, or he was never as far away as I thought. I reported the photograph. Police said there wasn't enough to reopen anything. No fingerprints, no evidence, just a blurry disposable camera print and a shaken statement. They suggested it might have been a prank, a sick joke. But here's what I know. About 2 weeks ago, during a heavy rainstorm, my power flickered out around 2:17 a.m. I live in a quiet neighborhood. No through traffic. No pedestrians at that hour. When the lights died, I went to the window. And across the street, under the broken glow of a street lamp, someone was standing there, not moving, just watching my house. The rain was pouring too hard to make out his face, but I could see the outline. Broad shoulders. Still posture. Patient. The power came back on after maybe 10 seconds. And he was gone. No footsteps. No car starting. Nothing. I don't camp alone anymore. I don't go into forests when it rains. And every time a storm rolls in, I check my locks twice. Because I don't think that night ended in those woods. I think it followed me home. And sometimes, when the rain is loud enough, I swear I can hear slow footsteps outside my bedroom window. Not walking, not running, just circling, waiting for me not to listen.